I was looking for a project to make, and when you have no budget, you really have two options, in my opinion, in film school if you want to try to get something off the ground. On no budget, you either got horror or documentary. Horror has always been the traditional path for most people. But when I started looking at the world we were living, I realized the horror movie was happening around me. I couldn't conceive anything more terrifying than, as Max Blumenthal said, Nurse Cratchit getting the nuclear codes, which would be Hillary Clinton. So, you know what I mean? That's what he says. Like, so once I looked, mass incarceration, I mean, all these things that election brought up a lot, it stirred up a lot of stuff that we had kind of overlooked, not just Hillary Clinton, I think beyond her, of these just horrific acts against humanity that, these war criminals and mass murders that these ruling classes, that when that came together, I saw that the convention was going to be happening in Philadelphia, and I've been following the whole primary and everything. And like, I know Philly really well. Like, I was homeless in Philly for a while. Like, I know how to get around Philly. And the fact that it was going to be there, and then it brought to light sort of the last really big primary like that, which is what inspired Medium Cool. I knew that I could get around Philly pretty easily. So I got the best camera guy I knew, and I said, I will pay you, I pay for your plane ticket, and I'll get us somewhere to sleep. But beyond that, when you're in film school, that's the time to ask for those kind of favors or those kind of projects, because once people get out, their rates begin, then real life begins, and they have to start charging you real money, right? So I knew that I could get this guy for a pretty fair deal. So I flew him out there, and I had people out there that put us up and everything. I mailed myself drugs. Just for when I'd have them, because I knew I was going to be on my feet a lot. So I made sure I had the proper necessities to be able to go 12, 14 hours. It was blistering hot. And so we shot the whole thing, right? Like that was when I fell in love with the style of how we make movies now. Like at that time, though, I didn't realize it wasn't really like done with any kind of strategy, but this is how me and Mark make movies now. But I basically just took the best camera guy I knew and was like, I'm going to take you to all these places where shit's going to be happening. Because I knew what the rallies were, and I had been in touch with Jill Stein and Cornel West and some people. So I knew like where things were going to be happening. At this time, though, the reason I made this movie was there was not an independent leftist. Now if you throw a stapler out your window, you could hit like 5 leftist podcasters, right? Like your butcher, the guy who sells you your blunts, and probably like the guy at the local Dunkin' Donuts all as a leftist podcast, right? At that time, though, the Young Turks was all there was. There was no Tim Black, wasn't even that much of a thing. Like there was no Vanguard, all these goofy bread tubers. They didn't exist back then. I swear to God, it was only the Young Turks. So as a filmmaker, it's like you only want to be filming something you don't because you think that it needs to exist. And I was like, no one is going to film what's really happening in Philly this weekend. I knew shit was going to be really crazy. I was in the communication with a lot of people online. I knew people were pissed off and were flying there. If you were in any face group at that time, you knew there was going to be a ton of different kinds of people there. But you knew the media was not going to show what was going on because of what had happened during the primary. That's when I really realized how much the media is a scam, is how they treated Bernie during that and how much they were in the pocket of Clinton. So for me, it was like, we're going to film the truth was like my idea. So I'm going to take you where everything is, and we're going to see how it's really being filmed by the media to what we're actually documenting. So we shoot this whole thing, right? And the style was like, I would lose my DP in the crowd because it was just fucking mayhem. And I would sometimes meet him like 3 hours later, and I just carried an H4 around in my pocket. I mean, that was really how loose the whole thing was. We'd just like take him places and just tell him to just film whatever happens. We had no idea. There was no shot list whatsoever. And we got back, and I'm looking at the footage, and it was banger. Like this guy was real. I took a guy from LA who like will never ever go out of his way to see this kind of shit, and put him in like the craziest mayhem and just told him just film whatever.
So what was the mayhem? Was it kind of like people protesting against Clinton or protesting for this person? Like what exactly was the mayhem? I know it was the Democratic, it was the convention, right? But what exactly was happening there?
So because it became more and more clear that, it'd never been so clear that the media was in the pocket of Clinton, that the DNC, because no one had challenged them so much from the outside. So like Bernie was doing so well. He went from 5%, he soared up. And since she thought she was sort of she felt like this was her coronation. So when she was challenged by Bernie, she never took him seriously, but she didn't register because the whole Democratic Party lives in such a bubble, how truly dire the situation was for working class people, how truly despised they were by working class people. That had never even been a consideration for them. And Bernie represented all those non-voters, even people from the right, all these people who just felt completely lost and let down by the system. I think that we all kind of projected whatever it was about us that was missing or that was hurting in our communities onto Bernie. That was probably our mistake. But the convention was incredibly close because the primary was incredibly close, and Bernie was going to allegedly going to contest the convention, and that had not been done in decades. So I don't know if ever a truly contested convention. So I think that that was something a lot of people were excited to see. But because they knew that this was a very high profile election, when people had been pretty much like politically unaware and not interested since Obama's first one, that had a lot of attention. But after that, people kind of tuned out. This was the most engaged a lot of people had been. A lot of people were awakened like me, but a lot of people knowing there'd be media attention there, were traveling there. You had like people from like honestly right-wing movements. You had like Flint Lives Matter was a movement that was there. You had the Green Party. I mean, you just had all these clusters, this kind of mosaic of different, people were burning Israeli flags there. There were people from the North Dakota pipeline there. I mean, it was like this massive salad of just so many different kinds of people. And seeing that many people united together and having footage of that, I don't think we've been to that collectively together since then. And I think that there was a lot of there was rioting, there was, police helicopters, there was the first Black Lives Matter rally ever, I think, was that weekend, Ralph. I mean, I think that the statement had been said before, but like a truly mobilized, I mean, they like rolled up in these caravans. It was, it was definitely popping off that weekend, and there was a lot of people there, and there was people laying down so that the celebrities couldn't get into the convention. There's people climbing the fence. I mean, we had just never seen anything like that in Philly to that extent, like Obama was big in Philly. I mean, this just kind of showed you like how truly let down the inner city was as they rallied behind Obama and they fucking mobbed out to kind of reject the Democratic Party just 4 years later.
Well, I mean, I think at that moment, people were kind of realizing that the Obama administration was kind of like just a nicer version of like the Bush administration. Like it was just kind of an extension. I forget who said that it was an extension. It might have been Jimmy Dore, who said that the Obama administration was just an extension of the Bush administration in terms of foreign policy mainly, but domestically it was pretty different. And I think I had a friend on who said that in 2016, if it was Bernie versus Trump, it would have been one of the close elections of all time because you have right populism and left populism at the same time.
I think so. And I think Bernie could have bled some of his, and maybe vice versa. I think they actually could have came after each other's bases, where I feel like with Trump and Clinton, you weren't flipping either person's base really. They were both like cult-like in that regard. Like no matter what, Clinton could have murdered 1,000 people and it wouldn't have mattered, and Trump could have shot somebody in Central Park, it wouldn't have mattered. I think they were entrenched. Bernie and Trump was a little different. I think he might have flipped people either side. Maybe Bernie might have gone a little wrong on some of the identity stuff, or the sort of the Christian nationalists might have flipped on him. But I also think he could have pulled some of Trump's base for sure if he said the right things. Now, would Bernie do that? I don't know. Like he gets very caught up in these little, he's still a cult member through and through. His idea is to be the sheep herder into the cult. He's the guy who's like, I'm not like the rest of those Democrats, but come this way and vote Democrat. I will say to answer your question about Viggo Mortensen. So I got back and I didn't know what to do with all this footage. I had never directed a documentary. I never edited before. I strictly wanted to be like a screenwriter or someone who directed like narrative films. So this was like completely new to me. The first thing I did was I watched like 150 docs. No lie. I was not a big documentary watcher. So I had this list. It was ridiculous. I was mashing like 4 or 5 of them a day.
Which one? Give an example of which ones you watched.
Dude, I watched everything from like Amy, Harlan County, Titty Cup Follies, all the John Pilger stuff, Black Power mixtape, or Black Panther mixtape, Agnes Varda stuff, Chris Marker stuff. I mean, every possible form of documentary, because there's so many different ways that one can make one. What is it? The seventh, I think it's called The Seventh Fire. It's produced by Terrence Malick about indigenous gangsters who live on reservations. That was so fire. I think it's The Seventh Flame. It's about, it's about
Terrence Malick. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really dope doc about like what's happened to the indigenous communities and their culture. You have like a kid who's like, whatever, he's from a certain tribe and has such deep roots, and he's like, all that stuff on his walls crossed out, and he's just got like a poster of Scarface. It just showed how like westernized, and it was really raw though. But The Other Side's another doc that's great from 2015. I think that movie's shocking. It shows a woman giving a blowjob in an Obama mask at some Florida party. It's or Louisiana party. It's about a really small town in Louisiana. It follows around a drug dealer. He's a meth dealer. Shows him cooking meth. Shows him. It's a really raw doc, but also
That sounds crazy. Yeah.
midway through, the guy gets arrested, and the plot completely shifts, which is interesting, to like a militia that wants to overthrow the government, but they live in like Louisiana, and like thinking about this part of Louisiana hadn't really extended out too far. It like never quite got from its roots, so it's like. But yeah, I mean anything. I mean, this list was a mix of lists I found online because I just didn't know where to start with like the language of documentary. I didn't realize there were so many ways to tell the story. But I knew I needed a narrator. I knew the whole thing was just like very, at least I thought I did. I knew it was just a very visceral experience that needed to be explained better. This is the thing about the doc and why I fucking hate this doc, and why when I get emails about people saying, "Can I put it back up?" because they had it on their playlist or something, is like, I don't think documentaries are meant to teach people stuff, but at that time I felt like I was a teacher and that documentary's role was to be the teacher. And I just don't agree with that at all. I think that you should be going into it not knowing, where I felt like going into this doc, like I'm going to show people what was going on at this time and teach them what they were missing and like what was really happening here. At the end of the day, human beings really don't know anything. And I think that we should be only going in with questions and only coming out with questions. And that's the same thing. If not, your audience is going to just eat the doc up. It's like, oh, I had questions, I have answers, he answered it. And that shouldn't be it at all. It should be the beginning of a quest where it's like, I watched your doc and I have a lot of questions now. And questions will make people go out and be active. It'll feel like it's something they can't digest in their throat. It's on their mind. But if you just eat it, it's like, oh, I wanted to know this math equation and I watched this doc and it taught me it. Now, like, that's it. Yeah. Viggo, it's like I knew I needed a narrator, so I emailed, like, we had a list of like 50. I mean, it was everything from Pam Grier, it was Pam Grier, Danny Glover, everyone from the Bernie Krat type of celebrities, people that just be interesting, like Pam Grier was somebody else that would be an interesting choice. And nobody responded. Elliot Gould responded. I loved Elliot Gould from the stuff he did with Altman. He got back to us, but he was like, he needed money and these things that we weren't going to be able to. Walton Goggins got an email and actually responded, which I'm sure you could never reach Walton Goggins now. But back then, the fact that he answered, I don't know why Walton Goggins was even on the list, but like I really don't remember why it was everyone. But Viggo was like one of the last. What was like, oh, Viggo was getting really popular at that time, going on talk shows and talking about the Green Party and stuff. We're like, okay. So we sent him in. I actually looked him up, and I couldn't believe that he actually had his manager's email on IMDb Pro. And usually those were often like not always that reliable. But so I emailed, it was like a very base email address. Like it sounded like somebody like a personal email address. So I emailed this guy.
Like AOL or something.
Yeah, I was super honest too. I was like, I don't have any money. I can't pay you. But I think this is a really important project and that we documented something that the media is never going to show. And I kid you not, like 2 weeks later, I get home and I check my email. I get home from school. I was living in Pasadena, and it's just like, it was just like, yo, it's me, Viggo. I couldn't like it was like I almost forgot. I didn't come, and I was like, oh my god! I started fucking screaming. He was like one of my dad's favorite actors. I was just going crazy, and it made it a lot easier to get people on the project. Suddenly, like everyone was offering to edit episodes for free. I was able to get like a whole team together, just all Viggo, and that was, I mean, that's how projects start to roll downhill. Is like you attach someone like that. A lot of people want to be on that project, especially students. And my chairman, when he found out, who's the guy who wrote Rush Hour, he suddenly was letting me miss class and being a lot more, accommodating to the project once he found out Viggo Mortensen was involved. So that was dope. But Viggo was even cool. Like he was like, I want to rewrite parts of he's like, send me the script. So I had a whole narration written that took me like so long, and it was definitely too long. And it was explaining every facet of what was happening during this primary and what was happening overseas. It was really like insane. And I was watching a lot of like Casino and like Scorsese films of like the long, elaborate narrations and stuff. But I sent it to Viggo, and he's like, do you mind if I rewrite parts of the script? And I was like, dude, whatever you want, anything, And so stuff in there like saying like fuck the CIA and stuff. I mean, at one part he's like saying fuck the CIA during talking about like the crack cocaine Iran-Contra scandal and stuff. Like he wrote a lot of that stuff, and I was down for it. He's like, I'm going to record it in my studio in Spain, and I'll email it to you. And he did, and I got to go to his house, which was trippy. He's like, he was in town at one point, and he was going to go on a live stream with Jill Stein and stuff. And he's like, will you guys come over and help me set it up or whatever? That was really cool. He doesn't even have like internet. His internet didn't even barely it was weird. Like we couldn't get on his internet. He had like this backdoor thing going on. Like he was pretty paranoid, but he was really cool. Unfortunately, the only photo I have with him, I was way strung out at the time. I was taking a lot of drugs to make that movie because we had to do it in like 2 or 3 months. But my eyes are completely like shut. I mean, it's not a great photo. It's like the only evidence of being with Viggo Mortensen. I'm like, making this crazy face. But no, he was really cool. The problem is the plan was to put it out like right before the election, and I just realized it wasn't going to be good. I realized too late, like we could get it out by that time, working constantly, because this was like we had like 3 months to put it together, but it's like this is going to be shit. And my teacher explained to me, my documentary teacher, like, you got to make a tough choice, like put it out when you and Viggo agreed, which is the most impactful, or risk like putting it out slightly like week by week instead of all at once, and like give yourself more time, but it's going to be post-election and it might not be as relevant, or it might be more. It was a huge gamble and it was a huge mistake. The quality was better, but after the election, no one gave a fuck. Even reaching Viggo was like near impossible. Like it was dead. And I think he lost confidence in it once he found out it wasn't going to come out at that crucial time.
Yeah, that is how it is. And especially with documentaries, like it is really, there's so much editing to be done there, like, and making it entertaining. It's really hard to do with like documentaries, especially. So why did you end up removing it and not kind of keeping it up after that?
Because I think it's trash. There's a lot of reasons I think it's trash. A shout out to the guy who shot it. I think he did a great job. I think the writing's trash. I think it's over explanatory. It's too time centric, so it doesn't have really like universal relevance. Like if you weren't around during the Bernie time, it lionizes Bernie Sanders, which is like I think it's a crime. I think it's a cinematic crime. If there was like a prison you could go to as a filmmaker, I think there's a lot of stuff in that film that I think are immoral, and I would be put into some kind of a gulag and like re-educated on how to like properly make cinema and use it as a real weapon. I mean, I'm hard on myself, but I think it's a disgrace. I think the lionizing and Bernie, I think the lionizing and Bernie is embarrassing. The use of uncopyrighted music, as much as I don't agree with copyright, we were using just stuff that like Jimi Hendrix. I mean, it's just, to me, it's cringy to watch now. And like, there's effects in there that things don't move with purpose, and there's just one motive of the whole thing, and that's to get you, in my opinion, to like support this Bernie Sanders rogue wing of the Democratic Party. And I think that